Going to continue with our good news stories, and Jonathan Arnold, who's our Director of Communities and Partnerships, is going to help us understand some of the ways in which communities are engaging post our lockdown and how we can be encouraged by them. Over to you.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you for that worship and for that excellent start to our day. For those of you who don't know me, Communities and Partnerships is a framework in the diocese that's really all about the community. It's about community engagement, community action, it's about social justice, and it's about climate change. That's what we're all about. We have four main areas of work: refugees and asylum seekers, homelessness, poverty, marginalisation, the environment, and then a whole category of chaplaincies in our workplaces, our educational places, on our streets. So that's who we are. And I'd like to share with you some good news stories. It's been great to hear from Ignite, because Communities and Partnerships, or C&P, let's call it, has a very close relationship with Ignite. And if you haven't been to one, it's really worth going to one. You know, there's probably one near you somewhere. Sittingbourne, Herne Bay, Maidstone, Cliftonville, you know, lots of places. On our cards, I thought these were great, but I just added a couple of categories here for Jesus that are really speaking to me at the moment. One is refugee, and one is outcast. Because in our world today, it's a little bit difficult, isn't it, to think about where the good news is. Where is the good news in Ukraine? Where is the good news in Afghanistan, in Yemen? Well, I want to suggest that you good people here today are going to be part of the good news story here. Let me just tell you about our refugee work and our refugee officer, Domenica Pecoraro. Since last August, in addition to her normal work with Syrian refugees and schools and education and art projects, she's been running drop-in centres for Afghan exiles. And these are full every single week of people receiving hospitality, clothing, food, pushchairs, toys for children, you name it. And now we're going to be thinking about Ukrainian refugees. This week we had a meeting of national church leaders. I was there representing Bishop Rose, from all Christian denominations. And there were three things that really stood out for us. One is that we need to help the people in Ukraine. So if you know of a contact in Ukraine, you know of a church, you know of somebody who might know of somebody in Ukraine, we might be able to help them directly. Carol Smith here from Recolva is our Overseas Partnerships officer. She runs the overseas group. We already work with Germany, Madagascar, Aras, and other parts of the world, and now we're going to be thinking about Ukraine. So if you know of how you can help in Ukraine, then bring that forward to the table. Secondly, please pray for World Vision, who are working on the borders of Ukraine where all those refugees are leaving. Let's just put this into perspective. In 11 days, 2 million people have left Ukraine. In the whole of the Syrian conflict, only 1.5 million. I say only. That's the scale we're talking about here, and it will be arriving on our shores very soon. So just a heads up about how you can be the good news story here, because as Stephen says, there's going to be some information out on Monday. But what I'm promoting here is that everybody go to a website called sanctuaryfoundation.org.uk. sanctuaryfoundation.org.uk. Watch the video there of our Baptist friend, Krish. He'll tell you what's going on. You can pledge there your support for a Ukrainian family. And your community, your parish can make a difference. And if every church registers for that site, then that's really going to push the government into better action, because they haven't even got their humanitarian sponsorship scheme in place yet. We're not even going to hear about it until next week. And the place where refugees are going to be helped is in the local community. Don't leave it to the government. It's not going to happen. sanctuaryfoundation.org.uk. Also, Domenica is going to be giving you ideas about how we can help directly. Next Wednesday, we're going to be packaging up some parcels to send to Ukraine. These are going to be cosmetics and toiletries and essentials like toothpaste and soap and sanitary towels and so on. So if you've got anything like that you want to donate, it can go to Diocesan House, Anna. And if you want to know anything more about that today, Anna's got the stuff on her phone, but it will be out on Monday. Okay. We are working, as I say, as hard as we can with refugees. We're about to advertise for a new worker in Calais who's going to be working ecumenically there. We've got somebody, Kirili Reid, who used to be our Calais officer, preparing to foster unaccompanied migrants. We're working with other Christian denominations like the Methodists to find more accommodation for unaccompanied children, migrants. Even my own brother, I say even, my brother builds stuff, okay? Both of my brothers build stuff. They build houses, they build things. So my brother in Leicestershire has built himself an eco-house in his back garden, which he's going to move into. It's solar powered and all of that stuff, and it's got all the underground heating and everything. Which means he's got a 4-bedroomed house that he was going to sell or rent. He's now going to give it to Ukrainian refugees. So we put him in touch with Domenica, and we make something happen. When we talk about taking in Ukrainian refugees, or Afghan refugees, or Syrians, or whoever, it doesn't mean that you have to put them up in your own home. The scheme should allow for them to claim housing benefit, which will pay rent for a property. You can integrate them properly into the community and treat them with dignity. Other things are happening. We've got an amazing Refugee Concert coming up later in the year at the Cathedral. This is to raise awareness and issues about refugees in our society. It's going to be workshops with CRAN, Kent Refugee Action Network, leading up to that. We're going to have a professional choir who are going to be singing about refugee issues. And we're going to have the poet and playwright Lem Sisse, who is an Ethiopian refugee poet that some of you may have heard of. So those are just some of the things that we can do. Some of us here have been on the Hidden Voices training that the Kluwer Trust have been putting on. That's about spotting human trafficking or modern slavery in our society. And there's a new app. If you go to the Kluwer Trust, you'll find a new app, which is called the Car Wash app. And it can help you spot signs of modern slavery in our communities. And I'm sad to say that there's a lot of signs in our communities. Canterbury's full of them. I'm sure your towns are too. So we need to work together to stop that. And our chaplain, led by David Slater, our chaplains at the Port of Dover and Eurostar, are working with those officers and border force and those people who are suffering from secondary PTSD and the lifeboat people who are suffering from first-rate PTSD, because they're working with these tragic situations on a daily basis. Those are just some of the issues around refugees. To talk about homelessness, we've got Joe Richards here, our chaplain to the homeless in Canterbury. And Joe introduced me to a guy called Tony this week. Tony had a difficult childhood, I'll say that, to say it mildly. He became a distressed young man and a very angry young man. He found himself on the streets. He found himself with problems with addiction. And he decided to kill himself. And on the point of suicide, he had a vision of two people, a woman and a man. The man was Christ, standing right in front of him, and the woman was his deceased mother. And his mother said to him, "Look at what God has done for you." He said, "What's God done for me? God's done nothing for me." But then Jesus, standing there, reveals to Tony in that moment the fullness of life, the fullness of the gift of life. And Tony is a transformed man now. I spoke to him this week. I'm hoping to have many more interactions with him. And Joe's got any amount of stories of people on the streets who have come to Christ and who have had their lives transformed. And we see this in many of our partnerships and our work. In Canterbury at the moment, Connecting Canterbury, one of our groups, we're hiring a new network coordinator to really get all Christian groups together, of all Christian denominations and all faith groups who are working in the areas of community action and social engagement for the poor to actually work together. Ecumenical working is a really good way forwards. Another way that we're working with homelessness is a scheme called Break the Cycle in Newington, in Thanet. We're just about to take in our first residents who are released from prison, from Elmley Prison. And otherwise they'd go into homelessness. 40% of people released from Elmley go into homelessness almost immediately. And we're hoping to break that cycle of reoffending, of going back to the streets and then back to prison. There are so many good stories to share. What about in your communities? When I go around the diocese and meet people, it's been difficult during COVID, but it's a bit more possible now. And just recently, I've been to St Faith's in Maidstone just to see their new building going up. I've been down to Hythe to lead their Lent course and to see their shop on the high street called 101, which is church on the high street, literally. It's a community shop on the high street, and it's going to be there, visible, talking about Christ, helping people in need. In Ramsgate, we've got the community meal, which is absolutely flourishing. It's Debbie used to run it, Debbie Elliston, and now we work in partnership with another group there called Our Kitchen, which is a food club, not a food bank. It's not a handout, it's a hand up. So people can buy things through Fair Share very, very cheaply. And it's fresh fruit and vegetables and produce in St George's Hall in Ramsgate. But we use that food to cook on a Tuesday. And the meals are now gourmet, 3-course meals, better than a restaurant. But what you get there is a fantastic sense of community. It's not doing something for someone else. It's doing it with them. I go and play the piano badly, and I sit there playing Beatles songs or, pub songs. And on my left is a guy called Martin. He plays the harmonica. And on my right is a lady called Dora. And this week they both wanted to tell me some good news. Martin said, "Do you know what? I've got a job. I've become a care worker. I've just finished my 2nd week of training as a care worker." That's really big news for this guy. Dora says, "I've lost weight. Look at me." Poor Dora, you're looking great. So Dora's so proud of herself. Lots of other people have things to share. It's just such a heartening time. And everybody is welcome. There's Gary. Gary drinks all day. He sits outside Tesco's in Ramsgate. But we've connected over detective novels and various other things. I like Wallander, he doesn't. Because he doesn't like the long names, the Swedish names. So he's a bit more of an Ian Rankin kind of guy. People here have difficulties. People who go to Ignite have open difficulties. And there are rules, of course. But the point is inclusion is welcome. These people are outcasts in some cases. These people are chaotic in some cases. We live with them, not for them. There are other great things going on. Eco-church and the environment. Lots of you have signed up to Eco-church. If you haven't, it's so easy. Please do it. Go to the Arosha website. Go to Eco-church. Click on the right-hand top corner. It says registration. Only 22% of our churches have registered, but literally it would take less time than making a cup of decent coffee. Oh, please. register for Eco Church. We're getting the Youth Council involved in our environment work. We're working with the National Church on a strategy for carbon net zero. Let's really galvanise ourselves here. There are some great groups out there. I was speaking at Bearsted recently. There's the group there called New Way. There's people there who are passionate about climate change, passionate about climate action. We work with other people on this, the Salvation Army, the Methodists, people of other faiths. Let's get together. Just talking of the marginalised, Bishop Rose and I went to see a family in a travellers' camp, a travellers' set, and we met this Romany family. And we've come to really get to know them well over the past few weeks and months because our chaplain to Gypsy, Roma and Travellers goes to see them every week, and he talks about Christ, and they read the Bible together, and they tell Bible stories to each other, and they sing songs. And last summer, this family was baptised in the river at Fordwich. It's just amazing. And then Bishop Rose confirmed them in the cathedral just before Christmas, and their journey of faith continues. The church is being revitalised by the poor. So, Jesus, a shepherd, a friend, a good person, he is with us. And we see him in so much that we do. I'm going to stop talking now. There are other things I could talk about, but I want to thank all of you, really, for all the amazing work that I know you're doing in your communities, when you're getting churches together to work for a particular issue, when you're galvanising your communities and your congregations to reach outside the building and to look who's on your doorstep, sometimes literally. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for being on this journey with all of us together as a diocese, because the diocese is everyone here, and we do it together. Thank you.